ultimately, the host would come in and do the job you wanted to do. Those are better for the audience, but the full nightmares, that's a gift just for you for the rest of your life. So
it's so true.
You're going to talk about this one forever, and you're going to laugh about it forever.
Somebody going to cue me, or do I cue myself?
Cue yourself.
Okay. Hey everyone, we are back with another episode of Let's Talk Off Camera, so let's get talking. Oh yeah. Oh yes. Today we are joined by one of my very favorite people, the brilliant Seth Meyers. I don't know if you know this, but when you do Seth's show, he warms up the audience. He's the audience warm-up guy. He does like a Q&A with the audience, which I'm sure he probably misses doing because of the writer's strike in TV, which is affecting every television show. And because Seth hasn't been able to do his TV Q&A with his audience, I thought we'd do, instead of Ask Kelly, we could do Ask Seth.
Oh, yeah.
Don't you think it's a good idea?
Yeah,
Great.
definitely.
Yeah. Do we have a lot of Seth questions?
We have some. We have some good ones.
Seth, I was really wishing would have been my co-host once upon a time. But I always say to him, thank God he did not become my co-host, because we would not have his show. Like, his show would not be in existence, because you can't work a live morning talk show and his show.
So that was post Regis, and I remember him coming in and doing it a couple of times with you, and it was magic. It was
magic.
awesome.
It really was.
And he was doing SNL at the time.
He was, yeah. He was brilliant.
And it was brilliant.
It was my favorite.
It was really great.
In
another lifetime.
In another lifetime, yes. I remember there were like articles written about it in Vogue.
Oh.
That he was going to be the next co-host.
Wow.
And like the Washington Post and like media outlets that don't typically cover our show. Let's just put it that way.
Right.
And yeah, it was heartbreaker for us. But
Yeah.
our loss is his and America's gain.
Yeah.
That's all I'm gonna say. That's all I'm going to say. He's one of these guys too. God, I owe him so many favors. He hosted my son's school's fundraiser one year, and he was brilliant. He was literally like writing things like as it dawned on him, and I've seen him host a bunch of things, and watching him write jokes, like responding to things that have happened. He's just another level. He's really super brilliant.
But would he have put on a singlet and let a Michigan wrestler throw him around the ring
we
like
talk
a
about
rag
that for a
doll,
second?
like Mark did on the show the other day?
I'd like to discuss this for a second.
That's a good question. But I would pay pay-per-view to see that. I really would. Yes.
What I would like to say, it's first is a statement, then it leads into a question.
Okay.
As we've talked about my morning meditation routine to help center me during the day and take away any of the dread, I'm now inserting a video clip of Mark being slammed onto a wrestling mat for that part of that morning routine, because it does bring such a sense of calm.
It's calm and peace.
It's calm and peace watching him slam down his face with the eyes popping out.
I think I told you this. We have friends that live in London, and they had never seen our show before. They'd never seen it. They just happened to be in the States for a wedding. They texted me and they said, I just caught your show for the first time. And they sent me this clip of Mark flat on his back. And they said, it's really just brilliant. And you have to read it with a British accent for it to make sense. But it's so funny. They were talking about how her husband will never be caught dead in yellow lycra.
I mean, I've done a lot of stunts on that show with you guys. That scared me. And I never get scared. That scared me.
Well, my question for the two of you, the sound that you hear on TV, what was it like in person?
It was thunderous. I was like, we went to Final X, the wrestling tournament to make the world team. And I saw Joaquin's coaches there. And everybody was approaching Mark and saying, are you okay? Are you okay? And they said, boy, when you slam down like that, we got nervous. I go, you got nervous. I was picturing the rest of my life, like these are supposed to be our fun years.
Oh, no.
Kids are out of the house. And now I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I'm really going to have to be his primary caregiver for the rest of our lives together.
Yes.
When
they were in rehearsal, I said to him, I'm like, can I sign a waiver as your producer? Because I can't be involved in this. Like, if this goes bad, and he's like, no, it's going to be fine. He's like, it's going to be great. And I'm like, I really, really, really am nervous about
I know.
this.
I had never seen you that nervous. I, for whatever reason, was not as nervous as I normally am. And I think it's because so many people have confused Mark for being a wrestler that I thought he actually, he is a wrestler. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right. Okay, fine. He's here. He's signed on. He's been patient. Seth Meyers is a stand-up comedian, television host, actor, writer, producer. He's an Emmy winner, for God's sakes. He's the co-creator of Documentary Now and hosts Late Night with Seth Meyers. He's also permanently banned from Russia.
Yep. Not permanently. I'm currently banned from Russia.
Currently banned.
Yeah.
When do you think the permanently banned will happen?
I gotta be honest. I think it probably depends on how the rest of the war goes.
No, really?
Yeah, I feel like that might be.
Yeah.
But
that could be.
it's tough because obviously I had to break the news to my wife that our summer trip was canceled.
Do you typically go to Russia in the summer?
We
Is
like
that
to
your
go to the
Russia
Black
time?
Sea. We have a little
Yeah.
place on the Black Sea.
Yeah. So do you know what it was that got you permanently banned?
I will say it was a list of 500 names, and the fact that it was a round number leads me to believe that Vladimir Putin said to somebody, "Get me 500 names." And I feel like some combination of a low-level Russian politicos and maybe AI came up with a list that I was on.
I've got to tell you, and I don't know like what level of narcissism this places me at, but when I saw the list, I was like, I'm not on that list? Why? I mean, why? What's wrong with me? Why am I not on the banned from Russia list?
You're his type. You're Putin's type.
You think?
I don't know. Maybe.
So you didn't have any like, because I know that you certainly angered Donald Trump. A lot of people give you credit with him running for president.
Right. So you should be. You think he'd be happy?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No. I think Vladimir Putin. We've told some jokes definitely over the years. We've had a punchline or two about historically, if you work for him and he doesn't think you do a great job, you fall out a window. And we've maybe.
Oh, so
yeah.
So you're doing okay. You're still doing okay.
Yeah.
You haven't had to up your security or anything.
No, we have made sure we bolted the windows shut.
Do you miss? I miss your monologues. I miss a closer look. Certainly you must miss being in front of your audience right now with everything going on.
Yeah. I mean, even if it was slow news right now, I should point out it's really hard being away. We love doing our show. I think our writers want to be here just as much as I want to be here. Everybody wants to be a part of this family and putting this show on, and we're really hopeful this ends sooner rather than later. But, the show has always provided me an incredible catharsis, getting to talk about the news this way in front of an audience with jokes. And without the show, I just mutter to myself. And
You're doing your stand-up routine at home?
I mean, my wife has always caught me talking to myself, and now my kids are doing it. The other day I was driving just with one son in the car, and he saw me in the rearview mirror, and he said, "Who are you angry at?" And I said, "I'm not angry at anybody." And he goes, "But who are you talking to?" And I realized, I got to keep a better eye on this or else I'm going to have to tell my kids, Daddy sees dead people.
It's funny, you have your written prepared remarks that you're going to say when you host my son's school fundraiser. Like if something struck you as funny, I'll watch you talk to yourself and then take out a pen and then write it down right there at the table.
I just did. My wife works for an incredible organization called Sanctuary for Families, and I did their gala, and I've hosted it for 6 years in a row. And she said, do you have to do that thing where you have paper with you and a pen and you sit at the table and write? Because I think people think you're crazy. And I'm like, that's where the gold is.
That's exactly right.
You gotta look at the room. You gotta write jokes the day of. It's always fun.
I do love you and your wife and your relationship because she is as cool and as calm and as unbothered
Yeah.
as any
Unflappable.
person unflappable. That is the word I'm looking for.
Yep.
And you are like my vibrating friend. The
Yeah.
two of you are like quite like what are your signs?
Well, yeah. Oh, that's good. So she's an Aries and I'm a Capricorn, and I think I don't know much about that, but it does seem like it lines up with what I've heard.
Yeah.
My wife is at her best a lot of the time, but mostly in a crisis. The craziest thing I've ever seen, and I, did a Netflix special about the fact that my wife delivered our second child in the lobby of our building, and just the calmness of that. Whereas I was there, her mom was there, both of us completely losing our shit, running around like a couple of chickens with their heads cut off, and she was the one. Like everything just sort of came into sharp focus for her, and it's nuts. Do you know this story? This is the craziest story about my wife and what an alpha she is. So
Yeah.
my wife gives birth on the rug in our lobby, and it's a way smaller lobby than what you're picturing. This is a very tiny New York City apartment building lobby. So
It's like the least sterile place on earth.
it's certainly not the best place to have a baby.
Okay.
Obviously I called 911, and we had firemen, and we had police officers, and an ambulance came. So then we had the baby, but you still got to go to the hospital. So we get in the ambulance. On the way to the hospital, my wife says, write the co-op board right now and say that we will buy a new rug. Now, she didn't say this because she felt bad. She said this because she had never liked the rug. And so she realized that, again, she could multitask. She had just given birth to a child. She was like, do it now. And so I wrote the head of the co-op board. I'm like, hey, I don't know if you heard about this crazy thing that happened 25 minutes ago, but we would love by means of apology to, get a new rug. And of course, the person wrote back, the only thing a human being in that situation, right back and said, oh my God, don't even think of it. We would never expect you to buy a new rug. So anyway, the next morning, we wake up in the hospital, and my wife, first thing she says to me, she's holding Axel on her chest. She goes, did you write the co-op board? And I said, I did. And she said, what did they say? And I said, they said they were just going to pay to clean the rug. And she goes, ugh, you did it wrong.
Some would say, and there are conspiracy theories out there that maybe your wife gave birth on the rug deliberately to get a new rug in. Do you still have that rug in the
It's
lobby?
the same rug, yeah. The biggest mistake we made is we should have every year, Axel just turned 5, we should have taken a picture of him between my wife's legs on that rug every year.
It's such a smart idea.
Yeah.
Why did you waste that
I know,
opportunity?
we blew it. It is really fun on his birthday. I mean, the doormen are everybody's really excited. He kind of belongs to the building, and it's very sweet.
Yeah, he's a child of the building.
He is a child of the building.
Your first baby was almost born in the Uber. Is that right?
First baby, yeah. So we should have known after the first one that my wife has very precipitous labor, and they happen fast. And we did have the third one was a planned home birth in the apartment. We did not even bother trying to make it to the hospital. But yeah, so the first one was almost born in the Uber, and she made it just in the door basically and gave birth. And then the second one in the lobby. So they have been real. I mean, for me, they've been real good stories, and that ain't the worst thing in the world.
It's like the greatest gift to a stand-up comedian to have a wife that gives birth like a person would, I don't know, like pull the cork out of a champagne bottle. Just like...
The only thing for a comedian better than a healthy baby is 10 minutes of material.
So take me through it. Does she just say, I think I'm in labor, and then a baby comes?
She made it halfway out the door, and then she stopped and said, the baby is here.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was nuts. And then she just doubled back, and I mean, she knew exactly what she was going to do. And the best thing, my mother-in-law went down the next day and got the security footage of it. So we have we have black and white security footage of our.
That I would love a screening of that at some point.
Well, the best is anytime you see anything on security footage, it seems like a crime's being committed, so it looks like someone's illegally having a baby.
Yeah, of course.
It's like someone's breaking and entering and having a baby.
It's so funny. I'm such a big talker, but I didn't feel good about the OBGYN seeing my vagina. I really could not get over that. It's like the least amount of people necessary, only on a need to be involved basis.
Try to keep that number as low as possible.
And here's Alexi with the fire department and the police department, all the lobby guys. I'm sure the porters came up, the doorman.
I feel like by that, I would say like 2 of the doormen saw everything.
Right.
By the time the cavalry arrived, things were a little bit more covered up. But in the moment, I would say that Kevin and Ramon, if you sat them down with a police sketch artist, could probably do a pretty good rendition.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Take me through the bathtub birth at home, because to me it seems like given your guys' track record, that would be the logical step and no muss, no fuss, right?
It was amazing. And to speak sincerely about it, again, my wife has had 2 boys on Sunday afternoon, which is the perfect time to have a baby. And this was a Wednesday night, got the kids to bed. The boys were asleep. She walked down the hallway. The minute they were asleep, she said, my water broke. Called the doula. Doula came over. Or was it the midwife? I apologize if I'm getting the term wrong. It was one of those.
It's one of the two,
Yes.
and I believe they are one and the same. But
In my defense, I've only been told the correct term 1,000 times. So
Right.
she then, that was around 7, and we got in bed together, and while sort of preparations were made to sort of get everything ready in the bathtub, we watched television, and then I think I fell asleep because obviously I was going through a lot and very tired. And then she said, I think it's time, and she just got into the bathtub, and again, it happened very quickly. I took a photo that she said if I ever show anybody, it's over. Just like physically, like my life is over, not just our marriage. And the craziest thing is our daughter Addie was born, and then it was just miracle, no medical, to not be in a hospital.
Right.
Because then we just, we cleaned her off. We lied her between us in bed, and we just fell asleep. Obviously the doula was still there and was, so we didn't feel like we were in any sort of peril in case anything went wrong. But it's so nuts that this kid has never been around all those beeping machines. And again, like, don't get me wrong, the hospital staff for our first 2 births were amazing, and we have such affection for them. But if you knew their personalities and you said, guess which one was born quietly in a bathtub, which one was born chaotically in a lobby, and which one was like sort of like had to hold on for dear life to be born in a hospital, it is absolutely who they all are.
So when you had your daughter,
Yes.
did you and Alexi look to each other and say, something is wrong with our sons?
Oh, yeah. We recently, she was feeding Cheerios to the 7-year-old, spooning it into his mouth. I was doing the same to the 5-year-old, and the not yet 2-year-old was feeding herself. Alexi just goes to the boys, you okay with this, guys? Because we're going to let her babysit, and that's going to be embarrassing to your friends. And they were like, what? And they don't even get the sarcasm. So it is shocking, though, the difference. Although, we did go back and we looked at some videos of our boys when they were her age, and we do feel like we've maybe been a little bit harder on her. It's just weirdly like we remember them dumber than they were, which I just think I don't know what part that is. I don't know if you ever had this exchange. Someone the other day, the middle one, Axel goes, "Mama, who's your favorite?" And she said, "You are." And he goes, "Who's your least favorite?" And she was like, "You are," which is 100% true. Like he just has the wildest swings, and he seemed okay with it. He's like, "I'm happy. I'm happy to be the least favorite if it also means I'm your favorite."
Yeah, but do the boys gravitate to Alexi more, and is your daughter more like a daddy's girl?
Not yet.
Or has that not presented itself yet?
I mean, she loves Alexi so much. I mean, I think she's very fond of me, but she is very much Alexi's angel. But she loves the boys. She's the happiest kid we've had. And the other ones weren't unhappy kids. But we had a thing, our son Axel, who's 5, has glasses now. And we sort of realized during early days of COVID that one of his eyes was crossing. And, when we ultimately got him glasses, it's that scary thing. Not scary, but kids can't tell you before they can communicate that they haven't been able to see well their whole life. So Axel sort of had the least amount of personality as a baby. And then when we put glasses on him, I think the world came into focus for him and he came into focus for the world. And he just like bloomed later than the other two. So it's interesting. They all have their own paces, of course, but they're a nice crew. It's officially a crew when you have three. That's what somebody told me once.
Oh, it sure is.
Yeah.
And I've got to tell you, honestly, if my labors and deliveries were like Alexi's, I would probably have a couple more.
Yeah. I think Alexi would say if I had been a little less stupid and married her faster, we would have more.
So I'm thinking about you now. You're home again, right?
Yeah. And when COVID started, Alexi, again, in her infinite wisdom, said, look, this is a really scary time, and it's going to be a terrible thing for, this whole world to live through. But we should also appreciate that we're never going to have a time like this again where you're just around, and we should make the most of it. And so this time she said, I don't want to do this twice. I did this for COVID. I don't want to do this again. Go get a part-time job. But, it's so out of my control that there's not much you can do other than just trying to be a good dad and a good husband. I was going to say it, Kelly.
Listen, it's Father's Day. Do you think they have anything planned for you coming up?
I did. Because I ate it so hard on Mother's Day, I told Lexi she could treat me as badly as she wanted to on Father's Day.
Wait, what did you do on Mother's Day?
Because I ate it so hard on Mother's Day, I told Lexi she could treat me as badly as she wanted to on Father's Day.
Wait, what did you do on Mother's Day?
I made a reservation at a brunch place. We just went, it was a place we've been before, and we just walked in, and like the table wasn't in the place Alexi had requested I asked for it to be. And she rolled her eyes so hard, it knocked over the glasses on one table over. And then I think I then played the victim, which I shouldn't have done. Like, that thing where when you screw up and then you're like, oh.
You screw up and double down.
And you're like, oh, I guess I can't do anything right. And then that wasn't great.
So you don't have big hopes.
I've asked for one. One thing is I made a pretty achievable Father's Day request, which is, have you ever been to Blackberry Farm in Tennessee?
So, okay, I have not been to Blackberry Farm, but Jimmy Kimmel every year sends us a box. My kids get so excited. They will come home from wherever they're living, and they're like, did Jimmy's meats arrive? Because he sends us like bacon and hams and like all kinds of stuff, this like box of delicious stuff.
I'm so, by the way, my takeaway of this whole podcast is finding out I am on the gift tier one below Blackberry Farm from Jimmy Kimmel.
Oh no.
I got a jar of mustard.
In Jimmy's defense, we go way, way back because his family used to stand outside the All My Children studios and get autographs and stuff. We go way back.
Okay, gotcha.
So
we've
known each other. We've known each other longer.
We're meat friends.
We're meat friends.
But I will say, the first Father's Day when Ash was a little fella, probably only 3 months old, we were invited to a wedding at Blackberry Farm. So we were there for Father's Day, and I think over the course of 24 hours, which is why Blackberry Farms is an incredibly magical place, I had fried chicken prepared 3 different ways. That's how amazing this place is. And so I said to Alexi, I'm like, I will only ask for this on Father's Day. If on Father's Day I can have fried chicken, I will feel as though I am being valued. And credit where credit's due. No matter where we've been, Alexi's managed to get very good fried chicken. And so, I remain.
Let's keep our fingers crossed for you.
Fingers crossed.
We'll keep our fingers crossed. So when you're hosting your show and it's in production, who is your favorite guest that you can recall? And again, I understand you probably can't remember having anybody on. And who is your least favorite type of person to have?
Yeah, that proves to me that you have a show like mine, because you knew I wouldn't say a person's name, but type of person was a very politic way
type
of getting
of
it across.
person, yeah.
So I will say, I thought it would be fascinating to talk to politicians. And in general, this is a bipartisan complaint. No matter what party they are, they tend to come out and answer the question they wanted you to ask them as opposed to the one that you did. And they will just sort of talk on a loop. At some point you realize, oh, they just started answering it again. So that has been less. I like talking about politics on the show. I find far more rewarding than actually talking to a politician about it.
Yeah.
And so that was a very nice discovery. So we have less politicians on. We try to make exceptions for ones we actually think will say something of value. So that's my least favorite type. And then, it's always fun for me, especially because they've all had such robust careers since the time we worked together at SNL. But my former colleagues at the show, there's just a nice looseness to it. And I will say the first year of my show, I underprepared for my SNL friends, and I think they were bad interviews. I think to myself, how can it not be great when it's me and Kristen Wiig? And then you realize, oh, no, you still have to be ready. And so since then, I have put the work in to make sure that I'm at the ready with old memories, and people never get tired about hearing about those years. And then it's really cool that, everybody I worked with that time has just gone on to do such cool things.
And what's so funny is anybody asks, who did you have on the show? And first of all, I don't even know which show they're talking about. But if there's a guest that's on Nightmare and a horror,
oh yeah,
I remember that guest forever and ever. And it's like locked into my brain.
I went back to SNL with a writer who'd also left, and we just went to hang out there one day. And I won't name names, but the host was a nightmare. And everybody was in such a bad mood, and they were talking about how terrible this host had been. And then the writer I was with said, here's the great thing. This is one you're going to remember. And this is one, you're going to talk about this one forever, and you're going to laugh about it forever. And ultimately, the ones that come in and do the job you wanted to do, those are better for the audience. But the full nightmares that backstage are far more interesting than anything they do on stage. That's a gift just for you for the rest of your life. So,
it's so
every now and
true.
then bad behavior, you have to take it for what it is, which is also anytime somebody shows you their true self, it is.
Oh, pay attention.
It's pretty special.
I want to talk about your brother
Yeah.
a little bit because you also have a funny brother.
We have a funny brother, and we're starting a funny podcast, which I'm very excited about.
Yeah, and so tell me about it. It's about like travel experiences you had as kids.
It's called Family Trips with the Meyers Brothers, and we're just interviewing different celebrities, and we're just talking about the trips they took with their family when they were growing up. We find it to be the great equalizer because, Josh and I, my brother, we just did Kate and Oliver Hudson's podcast, which is a wonderful podcast. So I would say that everybody, to some degree, has similar family trips growing up. Kate and Oliver Hudson are an outlier. Yeah.
Yeah, theirs are different.
Theirs
Their
are different.
experiences, their touchstones are different.
Yes, theirs are amazing, but probably not the ones that you had growing up. And so it's been so much fun to interview people whose work you love and whose show business career you love, but to talk about who they were as kids and what their relationship was like with their parents. And we kind of feel like, I don't know how it is when you travel with your family, but it's such a crucible when you go on vacations. And, obviously, I'm going to guess that you and I have been lucky enough to take some very nice vacations with our kids, but stuff still goes wrong. And, all of a sudden, you're in a rental car in a rainstorm and the windshield wipers aren't working and you're driving with your head out the window. And those are the things you never stop talking about. It's like a bad guest at SNL. Ultimately, the bad ones are the best ones.
We've gotten chicken pox on a trip where I called the pediatrician and I said, you're not going to believe this. And I'm watching them pop up and I'm like, no, he's got chicken pox.
Yeah.
And he goes, okay, we'll just keep him dry and in a cool, dark place. And, we were like, I think we were in the Caribbean. We were like in Barbados or something. Like we had waited all year to take this trip. And so now I'm indoors in a cool, dark place. And Mark is trying to get the other kid vaccinated before it spread. It was like the craziest.
It is when stuff goes wrong on a trip. We went before the pandemic. First of all, the year before we had gone to Miami. And I said to my wife, you know what's great about Miami? It's the trip. The flight's not that bad.
Yeah.
And when you're traveling with kids, you just get there and let's just make a deal. We're never going to go farther than Miami. And then the next year, my wife said, I think we should go to Uruguay. And so we went, excuse my French, to fucking Uruguay, which, by the way, I highly recommend. Uruguay is amazing, but it takes forever to get to Uruguay. And we were supposed to leave New York at 7 o'clock at night. We have 2 little kids. We're going to land at 10 in Miami, then midnight flight through the night to Uruguay. And the one upside is at least the kids will sleep the whole flight, right? We get to Miami. Our flight has been delayed from midnight to noon the next day. The following morning, I was holding Axel and pushing his stroller, and I was so tired. I looked down at the stroller, and then I looked at my wife, and I said, I don't know where Axel is. And she said, you're holding him in your arms. But that trip, that day, the whole trip was a challenge, but it was so worth it. And then, you know, part of taking terrible trips, and part of, by the way, you know, the chickenpox trip is then any trip you're on where there's no chickenpox is just the best trip you've ever been on.
It's a success.
Yeah.
What is the best horror story you've heard so far? What is the best horror story you've heard so far?
Well, I'm sad to report that I think our horror stories are worse than the other people we've talked to. The most harrowing for us is one year we were at Busch Gardens in Florida, and there was a hurricane alert, and they shut down the park just sort of midday, and everybody had to run to the sort of trams that take you to your designated parking area, and we all just sort of piled into the tram during this pelting, the kind of rain that hurts. And then the tram pulled out, and we just looked back, and Josh was just standing there. He hadn't gotten on the tram.
Oh,
and
no.
Let's just say there was some finger pointing between my parents.
Did Madame Myers?
Thank you for using her proper
I will only
title.
refer to your mother as her French name, Madame Myers. Does Madame Myers ever lose her shit?
No, my dad loses his shit so often that if she did, it would all fall apart. I think she knows her job. Her one job is to keep her shit together. You know what I should say? My dad is like, he's the one when you're on vacation, he's finding the activities, he's looking at all the brochures, he's planning the day. He provides a great amount of value, but he will lose his shit. And my mom has to be the one to sort of calm things down.
And were they all road trips when you were a kid? Because my dad was a bus driver, and my mom was afraid to fly. So anything we did had to be done in a car. And the last thing a bus driver wants to do is get in a car and go anywhere.
Right.
So we would drive down to the Jersey Shore for a weekend or a day or something. But it was always, I just remember there being an inordinate amount of stress.
One thing that has been interesting is so far most of the people we've talked to were driving vacations. And it's funny, just again, I think we're around the same age. You forget that air travel was a real luxury. I don't want to say it's not now, but so many people we're talking to got on their first plane when they were 12 years old or 14 years old or 16 years old. And it is true that, again, airports are very stressful, but if you're driving, especially on a holiday weekend, I think that might be the worst.
Yeah.
That might be the worst outcome of all. And then you realize how many people also travel on holiday weekends because that's when they're off. So much of it was about trying to beat the system when everybody else was trying to beat the system. And so now you're leaving at the crack of dawn and you're wearing pajamas and you're getting into the car and you're still stuck in traffic. And so
I just remember we would have my Aunt Franny and my Uncle Romeo in the car who were smokers. And if we were driving anywhere with them, my aunt didn't like the air from outside getting in. So we would have to roll up the windows.
So wait, she was a smoker who didn't want outside air? That is,
she didn't want the outside air,
egregious
the
behavior
from the car, right? So we'd be in the car with the smoke, and we'd be stuck in this traffic with this burgundy velour interior, with the sun beating down, sweating, and I just remember thinking, are my parents going to get divorced over this 12-hour trip to the Jersey Shore?
Yeah.
Because there was so much arguing and fighting, and my sister and I would get into it. And then my dad, he would try to like discipline us while he was driving the car.
Yeah.
He would just try to reach back there with his hand.
And those
separate
cars were
us.
so big, it was almost impossible to get an arm back there.
Impossible.
Yeah.
Seatbelts were not mandatory. They were not required.
They were not mandatory, required, or particularly effective.
Right, exactly. And my parents used to call them eyesores. So my parents would say, if we got into the car and you could see the seatbelt, they would say, take your hands and tuck it down, tuck the eyesore down.
So funny. I remember just telling my parents, it gives me a stomach ache. And they're like, all right. I think they were like, I'd rather that than you puke in the car. I'd rather you be incredibly unsafe. Can I ask you a question real quick?
Yeah,
Did you give that dress to Chili? I feel like you did.
I did.
I think I saw it on Instagram, and I just wanted
Yes,
to verify you did it.
I gave her the dress.
Okay.
I gave credit where credit was due. I said, Seth Meyers wrote me the loveliest note. You are one of the rare people in this business that handwrite notes. And I almost said to Mark, should I send Seth a thank you note for the note? And Mark goes, you have to calm down.
So I feel like for our listeners, have you talked about this? Because I want to explain real quick what happened. Was this Variety Women of the Year Awards? Was this the event?
Yes, it was the Variety Women in Power, Power of Women Awards.
Yes.
The POW, as they call it.
Okay, so
Yeah.
Power of Women.
And so Chili got up and she said that she liked my dress.
Chili from TLC
Which-
said she liked your dress
Chili from
and,
TLC.
and said she thought she was the same size as you.
Right.
She really made it hard for you not to give her the dress.
And I just look at her as somebody who is infinitely more cool than me. And I thought she was just being polite. And so, but when you said, I really think she wants that dress, you better send her that dress.
I want to clarify too, I did not just write you a letter saying, give her the dress. You had given an
yes.
incredibly moving speech, and I wrote you a letter to say that. And then at the end, as a joke, I mean, I was kind of joking too, but I said you should really give Chili that dress. Then I see on Instagram Chili wearing the dress, and she said, thank you, Kelly Ripa, and thank you, Seth Meyers, for telling her to do it. And I was like, what a nice outcome. Everybody wins.
Yeah, it's
Everybody
a nice outcome.
wins.
But because I have such a fear of public speaking, I panic out there, I ramble, and before I knew it, I had sweat stains running, and I was like, I can't give her this dress. This dress is almost unsavable.
Gotcha.
So
So
I
you-
bought her the exact same dress and gave her a fresh dress, and I kept
Class
the
act.
old sweaty
Do you
one.
remember what happened that day of historical note? It was the first indictment.
It was the first indictment? Is that true?
It was the first indictment.
You know, it's so funny. I don't remember that because it was Mark's first day co-hosting on Live with Kelly and Mark. And so I was so fixated on like, oh my God, he's probably going to hate this job. I forgot it was the first indictment.
I think it was the first. I know it was a big news day
No.
because it was.
No,
yeah.
you're right. It was the New York indictment. Albert just verified your.
And
yeah.
again, for our listeners, this was before there were a lot of indictments, so it was like a big deal. Like now,
Yeah,
they just
back
kinda
then
come
it was a
and
big
go,
deal.
and
Yeah,
it's
now
just
they
like,
do
oh,
come and
you
go.
know,
What's
whatever.
going to happen? Can you tell me? Because
No,
you are
I'm wrong about everything. I've never been good at predicting things. I'm good at
No, but-
talking about what happened, and I'm bad at telling you what will happen. You know what I think's going to happen? I think people like you and me are going to be friends for a long time, and it doesn't
Yes.
matter. It doesn't matter who steals what documents. Nothing's going to stop our friendship.
Nothing will stop our friendship. That is true.
No matter who shares what secrets with who.
Yeah.
So we got questions from your viewers.
Great. Oh, great.
So Albert has a longtime partner named Kyle. They're not
Okay.
married, or
Okay.
I would say his husband. They should be husbands.
Who's
but
dragging the feet? Do we know?
It's a mutual
unclear.
drag.
Okay, all right,
It's
gotcha.
a mutual
22
drag.
years.
It's 22
It's a drag.
years, and they're afraid
so
of
it's
like,
not nobody's
ruining
dragging their
something.
feet. It's the window's closed. If you could date for 22 years.
They're fine.
Yeah.
Okay. And Kyle is an amazing singer. And Kyle came up with a jingle for Ask Seth, but I don't think it's up to snuff.
It needs
No,
some
it's weak.
work.
It needs
And we
some
need your
work.
help with it, so we'll redo it.
Listen to what he had.
Okay.
Okay,
Here we go.
We're asking Seth Meyers.
You know what, Albert? I now I see where you're coming from. I don't think
Now
he's
I
I don't
see
think
where
he's
I'm
Mr.
coming
Right.
from.
I don't think he's the
not
one.
Mr. Right. He's not the one.
Give it another 22 years before you jump in.
Replace the jingle and the husband.
Okay. So I've got some questions for you. Will you answer them?
Yeah.
Correct. That is the right answer so far.
One for
Okay.
one.
Number one, from Andrea Hills. Which day drinking episode went too far for you, and how long did your hangover last? Also, which was your favorite day drinking episode?
None of them go too far for me. They absolutely thrive in going as far as you can go. I will say, it was always Rihanna was my favorite. Lizzo gave her a real run for her money. So those are the two sort of gold standards for me. Lizzo is my favorite story about any day drinking. We left a message for my dad on voicemail. She screamed "bye bitch" into the phone. And then Lizzo, independent of me, got my parents' address from the show and sent flowers to my parents' house with a note from my dad that said, sorry, I called you a bitch.
Oh, that is very
Class
sweet.
act. Class
She
act.
is a class act. Did you ever have a hangover that lasted?
Oh yeah, after Rihanna, I just fell asleep in the hallway of my apartment building, and my wife very passive aggressively left a glass of water next to my head.
Oh, that's very funny. That's amazing. Yeah. Did you ever get one of those IV infusion things for being so hungover?
You know what? It's really funny. I was feeling tired one night. I think it was last summer. I was doing stand up at City Winery here in New York City.
Which is a great venue.
Great venue. And I was feeling very tired. And Alexi said, you know what you need to do? You need to get one of those IVs. I've heard great things. It gives you energy. And so before the show at the City Winery, I got one of those IVs. Went out, did the show, felt like horseshit. It did not work at all. Came home, took a COVID test. I had COVID. So it turns out IVs don't fix that.
Do you think the IV gave you COVID?
I mean, I would be great to pin it on Alexi. It was her idea.
We've got another one from Ghost. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Other than laying in the sun doing nothing, what else is on your worst waste of time list?
Well, first of all, lying in the sun doing nothing is on my best waste of time list. So worst waste of time list. I don't quite understand the question, Ghost, but let me say that I am doing it more because my kids do it and like it, but I do feel as though skiing is a massive waste of time.
Skiing.
Yeah.
Did you learn how to ski as an adult, or were you a child?
I learned how to ski as a kid. Like before global warming, it was very cold to ski in New Hampshire and very icy. I did not enjoy it a great deal. And you're just sort of like going up and down and up and down. And at some point it's like, or we could just stay down. I feel like this is where we're going to end up.
Ghost has a second question.
Oh, good.
Was there a pivotal moment in your life that made you want to pursue comedy as a career?
Yeah. Some guys I was friends with in high school said we should do a comedy night. And so a bunch of us wrote sketches about things like the teachers or the football team. And we did very mediocre impressions of teachers. But I had a really good impression of one of the teachers. And it killed so hard. And just making people my age laugh was one of the most exciting things that ever happened to me up to that point.
That's a theme in comedians. They get like that first high of the laughter within the classroom, and that's it.
Yeah, then you just chase that high. Everything is addiction. It's just, can you find a healthy one?
This is the final question from Thos.
Okay.
Thos. Do you have any dream second chance theater sketches that you want to do in the future?
Thank you for that deep cut question. When we started our show, we had a bit called Second Chance Theater, which was friends of mine from SNL would come and we would stage sketches of theirs that hadn't worked. And I think we thought we'd do it a lot, but in reality, I think we've only done it 6 or 7 times. But I only overlapped with Will Ferrell for 1 year, and I never would have had the nerve to ask him. But the last time he was at the show, he said, how come you've never asked me to do Second Chance Theater? I have so many sketches that ate it so hard at dress. And so I will only say that my goal is to have Will Ferrell do one of his. We used to watch old Will Ferrell sketches that had never aired in our office because we had a server with all the SNL sketches. And Will never blinked. Like, if the audience did not go for it at all, he never took his foot off the gas. It was almost like out of hatred for their negative reaction, he gave it 110%. And so the sketch would keep going worse, and he would keep giving more. Because at some point, you take the L, and he would never take the L. He fought till the very end. It was great. He was like one of those soldiers that doesn't know the war is over, and he's still fighting. And you're like, oh, no, there was a treaty was signed like 15 years ago.
Well, this has been delightful. Thank you very much for joining us. I want to remind our listeners, don't forget Seth and his brother Josh, family trips with the Meyers brothers, Available everywhere you get your podcasts. Thank you for joining us. Kiss Alexi and the kids for me.
And do the same to your family. I love you, Kelly. This was so much fun.
I love you too. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye, you guys.
Bye.
Bye, Seth.
Guys, I love that Seth Meyers. He's really special.
He is. And you feel like he's like the boy next door. Like
He's got that
charm.
He's got that like mischievous charm.
Yeah. I want to go see the rug in his lobby.
I do. I want to see that rug.
Yes.
So he's touring, and I guess for 1 night, 2 nights, he's going to be at the Beacon with John Oliver.
Wow.
We should go to
Yes.
that in
Let's go to
August.
it.
In August.
In August?
Yeah.
Let's
I
go.
mean, Seth is really brilliant.
Yeah.
I've seen him do stand up and it's brilliant.
Yeah.
Should I send them a new carpet?
Yeah.
But I don't
building?
pretend to even know Alexi's taste, and I don't want to screw that up.
Yeah, that's a hard one.
Hey, besides listening to Seth and his brother Josh's new podcast, Family Trips with the Myers Brothers, wherever you get your podcasts, don't forget to tell your friends about our podcast. Let's Talk Off Camera with Kelly Ripa, wherever you get your podcasts. Can't wait to talk off camera with y'all next week. Bye, everybody.
Yay.
Let's Talk Off Camera with Kelly Ripa is a co-production of Melojo Productions and PRX Productions with help from Goat Rodeo. Our theme song is Follow Me from APM Music. From Melojo, our team is Kelly Ripa, Mark Consuelos, Albert Bianchini, Jan Chalet, Devin Schneider, Michael Halpern, Jacob Small, Roz Therian, Seth Gronquist, and Julia Desch. From PRX Productions, our team is Kara Schillen, Genevieve Sponsler, Megan Nadolski, Edwin Ochoa. Additional sound design by Terrence Bernardo. The executive producer of PRX Productions is Jocelyn Gonzalez. This show is powered by Stitcher.
Melojo.